Okay, this video is we're gonna discuss Amazon Connect contact attributes, which are used for personalizing your customers' interactions. My name is Steve Bonacontri. I work for Home Task AI, and we're going to go through the different attributes and show you how to use them and what they are, and to personalize your experience with your contact center. Okay, so what are contact attributes? Okay, so if you have Amazon Connect, you have a contact center, you can create personalized experiences for your contact center. Uh, when the customer is interacting with an agent or self-service, the contact attributes are used to personalize that whole experience. So, for example, a user calls in based on the phone number. You could find out the customer's name. If an agent picks up, you could find out what their name is. You could determine what channel they're on, voice or chat. So basically, it defines particular actions where a name value pair is used. That name value pair is used in specific workflows, in specific blocks. If there's something available, you could use it to personalize the experience. For example, um, suppose Steve's calling in as a customer and John Doe is the agent. Hi, Steve. My name is John Doe. I'll be helping you today. I want to first thank you for being a gold member. Now, what can I do for you today? So notice there's certain information here that we've and let's assume this is chat for the moment. Um, one thing is my calling number yielded my first name. The agent that picked up turns out to be John Doe, and we're automatically saying how I will be helping you today. And then also we picked up uh, my customer information, the fact that I am a gold member. So we're using that to personalize this interaction. So to make a long story short, contact attributes, some of them are system defined, some of them are agent related, some of them are coming from Salesforce. Some of the attributes are flow scoped. Some of them are user defined variables that I define, and I could be showing in the chat, or automatically showing something on automatically putting that in my sound and responses in my telephone call, etc. So let's get into it, and just briefly discuss some common use cases, and you just saw one of them. So the customer phone number in a contact can be used to schedule a queued callback. So the customer could call in, we get his phone number, uh, and we'll call them back. We display, we basically uh, send some sound that says we'll call you back as soon as an agent becomes available. Maybe it might say, Steve, we'll call you back uh, uh, as soon as an agent's available. We value your gold membership. We'll be right with you. Blah blah. Whatever it may be. Um, you could identify the status of the customer. That I was a gold member and blah blah blah. Uh, and you could identify the status of an order shipped. So in some sense, I could be calling this number and you know a recording of a voice used, let's say a Matthew voice used can say, Steve, I see that you've ordered um, uh, this particular product with this order ID, and shipping has been delayed. We're going to route you to a representative to find out what the facts are. Blah blah blah. You define the logic. You define how to service this call. Um, but the contact attributes are being used to look up, you know, customer profile information, ServiceNow information, cases you might have open, whatever it may be. And then we have listed here that post-call surveys can associate the agent name with the contact. So if this one particular customer is unhappy and he's saying that he didn't like the agent was rude, we're not responsive, uh, then the post-call survey could be like, okay, I rate this experience 4 as a customer, and there's an agent name associated with that particular contact. Now, remember, when we say contact, we mean that the customer is talking to the agent, or the customer is talking to a self-service Lex bot, but someone has contacted us, and there's contact trace records and everything else associated with that contact. So now we also could use the number of contacts in a queue for routing logic or whatever. So suppose an agent has the maximum 5 customers per queue, and uh, uh, the agent's routing profile is listening on this queue, and all of a sudden there's 5 customers, and he's servicing all 5 of them at once. And the bottom line is the number of contacts in the queue have been exceeded. So that system, that variable, the number of contacts in the queue, can be retrieved and used for logic and routing, etc. Also, as we're streaming information a call, we're streaming a recording. We can get the ARN and store the ARN in a database, and make sure that we could reference that later. And so typically URLs and ARNs and everything is really used, and you can just store that stuff in DynamoDB and reference it as you want. Um, Based on the customer interactions with the bot, you could identify a slot, for example, the type of flowers to order to be used in the flow, etc. Now this is very popular. You got a Lexbot customer intent. You've got a couple of slots. I need to know what type of flowers, where your address is being delivered, when do you need them, whatever. Those slots need to be filled, and the delivery needs to be triggered when they need to be delivered, etc. So you can get a slot information for that interaction with a bot and use it in a flow. And- okay, so let's move forward. There's plenty more use cases you'll see with every single business, with every single contact flow for that business. There could be a wide variety of ways to use contact attributes. Okay, now there's different types um, of contact attributes, in particular flow blocks. So remember, when you do a workflow, when you do a contact flow, you basically define block 1, block 2, block 3. You're going through a sequence of steps in which you're going to execute that flow. So I call in as a customer, it hits this contact flow, and basically there's block 1, I get started. I might log. Block 2, I'm going to record. Block 3, I'm going to get customer input. Block 4, I'm going to do something else. Each one of those blocks can use contact attributes. What type of contact attribute it can use, and which one will be available will depend on the flow, on the block, etc. So with runtime, with contact, I'm going to just say contact center attributes. There's a system runtime, and you can get certain information associated with things. Like for example, an agent name. Now you're not going to get the agent name unless the agent name is accessible in the block. So just keep that in mind. But there are system level things. I wouldn't, agent name is more like an agent, but you'll get it in runtime, but it's agent based. A queue, routing profile, all these different things that are already configured in the contact flow would be accessible. And then there's external, okay? So for example, if a Lambda gets triggered, in its flow block, there's a Lambda flow block. The Lambda could go get information out of DynamoDB and take that information and inject it into the response. And that would be an external attribute. So those are very powerful. There's always custom information going on. Even with Lexbots, you're defining a Lexbot, uh, the state of any particular response in that Lexbot is not necessarily part of the state of the workflow. So the bottom line is Lex can inject that into the flow. Okay, and then there's user defined, and where you define a name value in a flow, and that name value could be like, okay, I need Steve's address. So what does that mean? Well, I'm gonna define it exactly what it means. It's Steve's first name, last name, his address, state, zip, etc. So so I might use several different attributes from the customer profile to define this new name value pair. And if it's in a flow and you only want it defined in the flow, it has flow scope. So that's called a flow attribute, a flow type attribute. And so these are the different types of attributes. And I want to note that contact attributes follow the contact trace record even when transferred. So this is good news, and this is an interesting sentence here because you got to realize, um, internally I was defining a customer's address, and that customer address has PII information in it, and I might want to use that defined in a workflow. I might pass it to a Lambda to go look something up. If I log it, then PII information is going into Lambda log file, so I don't want to do that. So there's this concept of security here that you have to be aware of in redacting PII information, etc. And there's support for that in contact center. But the sentence I'm saying here is contact attributes follow the contact trace record even when transferred. So if I'm an agent and I pick up a certain part of workflow, I pick up, uh, I'm at a state in a certain part of the inflow, and I wind up transferring the call with a quick connect. Then the contact attributes go along with it, which means, um, like I said, the thing that I just want you to be aware of is in my workflow, I'm making sure I'm not logging anything and I'm making sure everything is secure as possible. And once I transfer that call and I'm in a different workflow, I got to make sure that no Lambda is logging that to the console and it's not being passed, PII information is not being passed. So that's the thing that struck out when I made this note. Um, but anyway, moving on. So in a block, let's suppose I use a defined variable, and I say it's dollar. I define it $ customer info with Steve with a phone number, and I'll be able to reference this variable in a Lambda function, and I have to make sure that the PII is we're compliant with PII and all the compliance standards. But just pointing that out. So let's go one step further. Okay, so this is a diagram that Amazon shows us, and it's kind of interesting because it really simplifies, visually simplifies what's really going on here. So let's suppose our customer interacts with the contact flow. Now remember, contact flows could call other contact flows, so keep that in mind. But just to review the simple concepts of contact attributes, keep in mind that the contact flow can read data from the system, so it knows the agent and the queue. So Amazon Connect provides the value when the contact enters the contact flow. Um, uh, let's say, a- and when the sound file starts streaming and media starts streaming, Amazon Connect system also provides the media stream. Let's suppose I'm using Kinesis, and the media stream comes in, and I'm streaming a file, the media, and I need to know the ARN of the sound file, and so what do I need to know? Well, and typically, what you want to know is where did this sound file go, and so Contact Center basically organizes files on S3 by date, day, time, whatever, and it puts the sound file on disk. And there's an ARN which is a resource name that's pointing to it that you could reference it, use it to reference, and so those are Amazon Connect, um, system variables. Now, if the contact flow, if you have a block where you're saying, okay, I'm going to call Lambda and some inputs going into the Lambda, and the Lambda goes and gets a value out of DynamoDB, and the Lambda returns that value, then that's called an external attribute. And you could reference it in the chat, in the phone call, whatever. And the bottom line is externally, it was retrieved by Lambda or Lex. And like I said, if in the case of the Lex bot, you've got slots and you've got intents, and there's just different things with the Lex bot. Um, Same situation. Your response is injecting variable state into the contact flow, so you could reference it. And then there's the last one was the user defined contact flow. Read and write this data, and you define what that data is. You define, you know, you define exactly what the variable name and the value. And the thing is that you're always aggregating things or aggravating text. Like if I get the first name and last name of the customer, I want to say, oh, the full name of the customer's last name, first name, last name, whatever it may be. But that's a user defined variable. You define that in the contact flow. And the user defined variables could be accessible across flows unless it's a flow a user-defined variable, which is only accessible within that flow. So there's different types of flows. We could get into that, but let's move on to see what we have next. Okay, so what are the types of the contact attributes? Now, you always use what you need. I mean, you don't have to know all this stuff, but whatever you're trying to do, you would wind up going to these contact attributes and see what they are. And so these are the different types. Um, of attributes which are available in particular flow blocks. So so some of them might be available, some of them might not be available, depending on what block you're in, depending on what the block is doing. Um, you know, you have a different you could use different types of contact attributes. So there's system. We know what the system is, right? We've got different queues. We got different security profiles. We have different agents, etc. And then we have different type of attributes. And like I said, the agent has all the agent attributes. And you could get information about that. You could find out information about a queue, how many users are in a queue, anything associated with a call. So the user's calling in, any information associated with that user, that customer making a call is in the call attributes. And we'll take a look at these. It'll be clear to you in a minute. And then there's a chat initial message. We could access that. There's media stream information, Lexbots, and here's a case management information. There's certain cases get anything it wants. So the Lambda gets the input from the input that's available in the block. The contact attributes is available in the block. And based on that, the Lambda could go look up in DynamoDB some additional information associated with the user and return that. That would be an external attribute. And Lambda could inject that into the flow and we could have that state. Now remember, like I said, the agent can transfer the call and all this information is getting transferred with it. And we talked about user defined. We could define anything we want, name, value, pairs. And once we do that, the state variable is accessible within the flow. And the flow is just like a user defined, only it's got flow scope. Now remember, it's always good practice to say, you want to decouple dependency. So if you could do a flow scope, do a flow scope. And try to limit the variable in the state to the flow, because if you wind up making it easy to find, and you have one flow call another, it could be introduce a dependency, and that dependency might break. Now, which brings up another very good point. If you try to use a variable and it's not there, it will throw an exception, and you'll go into the exception block in a workflow. So keep that in mind. Um, okay, now we have Apple messages for business. So let's suppose we we detect that this is an Apple user in our workflow. We actually call a different Apple workflow for this particular user, and they interact with Apple messages for businesses, particular um, contact attributes associated with Apple messages. And then we have customer profile. This is the big powerful thing, right? Customer profile. We get when the customer calls in, the when the agent goes to the agent workspace, we have connectors that connect to Salesforce and pull the customer profile information into the agent workspace. We have ServiceNow information which comes in. The open cases show in the agent workspace. In addition, the agent workspace is showing step-by-step guides on what the agent should do for the customer with these links that they could click on, and so it's becomes a very powerful system when you start using some of these contact attributes and make your personalized flow to really accelerate helping the user and getting them through the interaction. And then there's outbound campaign attributes where you could do an outbound campaign and you could use some of these contact attributes in that campaign. So, based on certain information or the state of a of a contact, you could send an email campaign, let's say, to the customer with information like, "Hey, I see you're a gold member and you've used our system, and we want to see you happy. So here's a 50% coupon off of your next product or whatever." We will take a look at the campaign capability. Usually, contact centers use other campaign capabilities, which are very large scale. So I will have to see what Amazon Connect is offering at this point, but certainly worth looking at. Okay, now let's do this. What I'm going to do, since I just really described these at a high level, I think it's worth going into and showing you the documentation. So this is the documentation um, that lists the available contact attributes in Amazon Connect and the JSON path references. So if you look at this, what you could do is you could see the system attributes. Okay, so these are the system attributes, and these are uh, how you reference these attributes. So you could see, you would need this to use them. You have to use this information. But imagine that you want at certain point in your contact flow, you want to know the customer's phone number, um, and look at what area they're in, and see if it's an international call, if it's a local call, is it a call in Connecticut, whatever it may be. It, it, you know, you could route based on that information. So I'm not I'm not saying what how to use these, but some of them are extremely important. Like for example, customer identification number. Out of Salesforce in the customer profile, we'll get the customer ID. This is a very valuable attribute. We want this attribute. We want it. We might use it to store and relate the customer ID, the the ID of the contact with the customer ID. But in either case, the customer ID has certain information, and we're getting that from Salesforce, and we might want to store it somewhere in DynamoDB. So keep in mind that some of these things are very valuable. And so what you could do is you could look at this and you could determine um, which ones you could use and how you could use them. And we're gonna do that in the following video. We're going to think about you could we're gonna do a simple example with the workflow and try to print some of these things out and and take a look to see what we have access to and just for example, so and notice here um, there's a task that has been defined like show maybe the task is show the agent you know a list of documents a step-by-step list of documents that they could use and maybe in this could be used to display that for the agent whatever. But there's a lot of stuff here. I wouldn't get too overwhelmed. Notice that there's some segment attributes, and this looks kind of powerful too because you could see this in the contact flows and the contact blocks, and you could try to figure out how to use some of these allowed these values as they come in and make certain decisions. Whether you're having an inbound or outbound. So let's just talk. Let's just talk about. Now here's some view attributes, some capability attributes, customer video capability, agent video capability. Um, we don't typically use video. I've been in a lot of projects. I mean, of course, video is powerful. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes to contact center, you got the voice and you've got the sound and you've got all the machine learning, which operates a lot of it operates on text. And so usually the video server isn't activated, but I'm sure there's very good uses for it. So here you get queue attributes, uh, queue name, how many contacts are in the queue, oldest contact in the queue, how many agents are online, agents that are available. And here's your call attributes, these sort of voice attributes I was referring to. And like I said, I like out of the box usage of some things. I don't like building framework code, but anymore. But some of this stuff is extremely valuable. And you've got your media attributes, etc. When the media started, etc. And here you have your Lex contact attributes, and these would be important, like the intent name, what's your slots, um, what's your confidence score, sentiment analysis. All this takes time, right? No, I mean, you create a Lex bot. Your goal is to fulfill what the customer wants. Customer wants to rent a car. What day? What time? What type of car? Um, etc. You want to fulfill that order. You want to book that car for the user. You want the user to be happy and just get things done. Yeah, it would be nice if you were talking to that user and saying, I noticed you ordered a luxury car last time. Would you like the same thing this time? Yes, of course. It's good to have a personalized experience, but the goal is to fulfill without the user and giving the user what they want. These are the K-state details. Like I said, um, you could connect ServiceNow. The agent could have some of this case information. This might be case related to Amazon connects case management or ServiceNow, but there's some of that stuff. And the Lambda contact attributes you reference using $ external attribute name. Um, and like I said, as long as the Lambda returns the key value, you can reference it and use it to do something. So depending on what that return name value is, you could use it for anything you want. And and the user-defined attributes you reference with $ attribute. Um, and there's a limit to the number of attributes. I think it's like 56, but it's based on the size. If there's some based on the total size, but let's suppose it's about 60. And then here's the Apple messages for business attributes. And you'll see there's some demos on YouTube which show some interesting stuff by Amazon that you might enjoy. Let's just see what else is here. Okay, so this is the customer profile attribute. So this to me is the most important thing because this is where it says 56 attributes. If each one is 255, but um, but you could see that I could get in the customer profile, if I have a profile in Salesforce and that customer's pulled in, I could reference some of that information, um, and I could use that in my workflow. So you could go look in this page and determine, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this page and we're going to do a little bit of experiments and try to access some of these attributes and prove to ourselves that we can do that and use it. I just want to, and what I'm looking for now is, um, let me just, okay, so that's the end of this. So let me just try to review one more thing because I think there's a customer. Let me see. Yeah, there's customer assets, customer billing. Yeah, so notice there's a profile ID here for customer, but up in the that we were just looking at a customer ID, which is coming from, I believe that's coming from Salesforce. So think of customer profile attributes, and some of them might be coming from Salesforce, some of them might be coming from DynamoDB, whatever you have the ability to distinguish them and use them. Okay, so that's all we wanted to talk about this lecture. I'm sorry it was so high level and so general, but I think I got across the point. And so now, like I said, you're not going to be an expert in all this stuff. So let's go and do a video and let's do an example and try to figure out, look, I just want to use one or two of these things. Let's see if I could get access to these things, if I could reference these things. What happens when I log these things? Am I exposing PII information? How do I keep this information secure as it's floating around? As long as it's internal to the contact flow, I don't have to worry about it. But but that's another compliance um, subject where we have to convince ourselves that these contact attributes, as they flow around, as they get logged or whatever, uh, how do we mask these things? How do we keep this system as compliant as possible? And we'll take a look at that later as well. Okay, thanks for watching.